G'day, it's James and welcome to the wine room. Bet you thought I was going to come in like Tom Cruise. You guys would be so lucky. Anyway, today what we're going to do is we're going to look at 5 or 6 or 7 things that your mum didn't teach you about wine tasting, and in fact, she probably taught you wrong. So let's pour ourselves a little bit of a glass here and just check this out. So don't pour a whole glass, but you pour enough so you can go and have a look through. And the very first thing that you need to do is, my mum would always be there and she'd say, stop staring at your food, just eat it. Well, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to stop and you're supposed to take a look at the wine. The color will usually tell you something about it. So what you do is you have a look on a white background and you just check it out. And sometimes you can tell the kind of a wine it is by whether you can see through it or not. So at the beginning, all you're doing is just check and make sure there's no gross floaty bits in there. So whether it's a piece of the cork, something from out of the bottle, a bug because the person never cleaned the glass out properly, that's all you're doing just at the beginning. So the next thing to do, my mum used to always tell me, James, stop playing with your food. Well, what you want to do, if you really want to be able to smell this properly, is you need to learn to swirl it. Counterclockwise if you're right-handed. If you're left-handed, feel sorry for you, but all you do is you make sure that you do it as though it's going clockwise. One time I was there and my mum, she fed me some tripe, and so I was there and I stopped and I smelled it. I went, oh man, that's not good. And so my mum said, stop smelling it, just put it in your mouth and eat it. And so this is what you're supposed to do with wine too. You're supposed to smell it. You make sure it's not off. So how do you tell if it's off? So you'll have a smell and it'll smell like Band-Aids or wet cardboard or nail polish remover or vinegar. If it smells like any of those things, it's not going to kill you, but you know, it probably won't taste good. It's generally got a fault. There's another one called barnyard notes. And so if you went into a horse stable that had not been cleaned out, it probably smells a little bit like that. So, and how do you smell it? Let's get this thing here. Go around. Stick your nose in the glass. Stick it in. Stick your nose in the glass. You've got to stick it in there to really be able to get a smell of some of the volatiles. So when you start swirling it, then it helps some of those nice aromas evaporate and you can smell it. And then you smell it and say, can I smell any berries in there? Particularly if it's a red wine, you're looking for black, blue, and red kinds of berries or fruit. And so what you can also do is make sure you put your mouth in there over the top and just like a little baby, breathe through your mouth and your nose at the same time. And that's how you get to learn to smell it really well. So now we've done the first couple of things. We've looked at it against a white background. We've been there and we've swirled it around. We've been there and we've smelled it. And we said, well, you know, I can smell some things in here. I can smell sort of like raspberry. I can smell something like a cherry. And I can smell something in there a little bit sort of like a hint of licorice. So now we're ready to actually start tasting it. My mum would be there and she'd say, stop slurping, close your mouth and stop smacking. But you got to do both of those things. Because what happens is, unfortunately, we've only been taught to taste with our tongues. We haven't been taught how to use our whole mouth to deal with wine. Wine is like the most complex food that we ever deal with in life. A lot of times you'll get something like a strawberry, you'll smell it, and it's mostly just one of the smelling components, which is called an ester. That's pretty much what you get inside of a strawberry. With a banana, you mostly get one ester. But with this little beauty here, you're going to get over 180 different esters. You're going to get 52 different kinds of alcohol. You're going to get phenols and polyphenols and all sorts of other amazing things in here. There's over 1,000 organic compounds in wine, and that's why people can say, oh, it smells like chocolate. You don't smell a banana and say it smells like chocolate unless it's coated in chocolate. But you can be there and you can get all of these different smells and scents. So I'm going to take a sip of it. I'm going to get enough in there to sort of put in my mouth. I'm going to slosh it around from side to side. Then I'm going to suck some air bubbles through. And then I'm going to, after about 15 seconds, I'm going to spit it out into the spit cup. Remember that if you've got a spit cup and you're spitting out there, it's really classy if you're at a wine expo or if you're drinking wine. If you're just spitting on the side of the street or at a nice fancy dinner party, then that's not cool at all. You've got to learn to use your mouth to taste things and to feel it. Because if you're there and if you've got some spicy hot sauce on your finger, you can't feel it. You put it in your mouth, your taste buds can actually taste that, but you put it on your lips and your lips can feel it. So you really have to get used to using your mouth to be able to feel the wine. So not just taste it, but feel it. So now, what you've been waiting for, gonna go through, gonna give it a swirl, start to get the air to interact with these things, get some of the volatiles and the organics out there so you can smell it. And then let's have a sip. And now comes the symphony of flavor. You taste so much stuff going on there. But there's something else you can do, and that's basically to close your mouth, breathe it across the top of the wine, and then let it go out through the top of your nose. Because in the back passageway between the back of your throat and your nose, that's where 70% of what people think is taste actually comes from. It comes from the retronasal cavity. And so with that, I'm definitely getting some cherry. And now instead of it just being cherry, I can say, what kind of cherry does it taste like? Tart cherry? No, it's more like a dark bean cherry. Something like that. You get a hint of the raspberry, and it's kind of like a black raspberry flavor. Just an ever so much of a hint of licorice, and just a little bit of like a slight black pepper. So chances are this has got some Shiraz in it. And so that's what you do. And so then after you've done that, what you're doing is you're savoring it, you're analyzing it, and then you're using the most important thing that you can use with wine tasting. And the most important thing you can use with wine tasting is your brain. So what you're doing is you're building up a database of all of these different things. So if you haven't started looking at it before, well, start looking at it. And so you say, wow, I noticed that there's a difference between when I look at a Shiraz and a Pinot Noir. They're both red, but there's a difference. So you can also be there, and it will also show you things like whether it's got oak in there or not. So you can smell it, and you might be able to smell sort of like a vanilla flavor, or sort of like a bright cinnamon flavor, and you'll go, oh, okay, that's probably from American oak. Or you'll smell sort of like these dusty flavors of when you open your grandma's cupboard and you smell her baking spices. And you say, wow, that's probably French oak. And you can also learn to taste the difference between those things as well. So once you are thinking about what it tasted like, you can really start to taste some things like sometimes if the alcohol level is off, it may be a bit unbalanced, it may be a bit high. You'll be able to taste that alcohol burn like at the back of your throat. You'll be able to taste sweetness, and you'll be able to say, oh, there's some residual sugar in here, like in some champagnes or particularly like in Rieslings, you'll find that. You can also sort of taste tannins, which you'll find are in red wines. And so you go, oh, that makes it taste really drying. And we'll be able to get into tannins later and talk a little bit more about what they do. When you taste it as well, you can find acidity. And so especially if the saliva glands at the side of your mouth start to give you some saliva, and you go, ooh, then that's most likely the acidity from it. But the most thing is, don't overanalyze it, just have fun. But remember, if your mum says, don't play with your food, don't slurp, and don't spit, then she's wrong when it comes to learning how to taste wine. So all I want you to do is just go out there, start looking at things, start swirling it, smell it, sip it, slurp it, smack it around in your mouth, spit if you have like 5, 10, 12 wines to taste that evening. And most of all, just make sure that you savor it and relax. So in the meantime, you be good to yourself, and I'll catch you next time.